Oh boy.
Stream is up in five, four, three, two, one. And welcome to O'Malley Live on this, the 24th day of March, 2020. I want to thank everybody for joining, whether you're watching live or in post. The number to contact the show is 234 650 4920, or you can email us at o'malley'sadventure@yahoo.com. This episode of O'Malley Live is brought to you in part by the Tremont Coffee Company for all of your hot and cold brewing needs. Check out the Tremont Coffee Company at 215 North Erie, Massillon, Ohio, Tigertown, USA. Today on the show via Anchor, I have the voice of We Live on a Planet, Patrick Gorton. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, this didn't quite come off the way that we wanted to, um, but it's gonna. I think it's going to work this way. We're
Yeah, it was a good learning experience for both of us on our end, I think.
yeah. The Skype thing needs some tweaking. I can see why people switch to what's the other one? Zoom. I think Zoom's the other sort of face to face type um, software. But anyway,
Yeah, I've heard quite a bit about Zoom and Zoom meetings.
right. We'll have to maybe work that one out because, and the reason that I say that is I'm going to actually use that into my little segue as far as uh, the first time I heard you on Anchor FM and what I thought Anchor was at the time. When I first come across Anchor, I was like, wow, this is really neat. It's a place for where everybody can have a podcast. It didn't, all you had to do really was have a phone. And at that time, you were just coming off doing your Walmart interviews. And, and so I was listening to you, Nick Diaz, and Maria Humphrey, right?
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I get it now because these people obviously work in radio and they're making the transition to something that's digital. Because
Right.
especially you and Nick, I let a couple people listen to your podcast. I was like, man, check these people out. And then I found out you never worked a day of radio in your life.
Never.
And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So, no, that's the story. I don't know if I was so much let down or I thought, no, man, this cat's got to be lying. He works in radio and he don't want to get caught.
Right, right.
So-
It's funny though because I had a lot of feelings about Anchor when I first stumbled upon it, and I stumbled upon it just by chance myself. I was going through the App Store and I saw an app that it said Radio Reinvented, Anchor.fm, and Radio for the People by the People, and make a podcast. But I was intrigued by the radio part because I grew up in the 70s. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and DJs were really hip and cool, and shows like WKRP in Cincinnati. And so you wanted to be a DJ and you wanted to call in and be featured on that DJ show, and you appreciated DJs. And so I was intrigued by that. And they were really different, which when Anchor first came out, you could only do 5 minute segments, and then it would just dissolve. And so I don't know. I just kind of went in thinking I was doing a radio show, and I pushed it that way for a while, even though my first podcast was about self driving cars,
right.
which is a train wreck. Our first podcasts are always, we look back at them and go, it's almost like if you're an artist and your first painting or your first sculpture, you're your worst enemy. Anyways, I think we all are.
You definitely our own worst critic. My first three videos that I uploaded in September of 2016 to YouTube, I made the mistake of watching them. They were up for maybe a week, and I pulled all three of them down. So, yeah, it's a humbling experience. I, one, I'm terrified of being on camera, and two, I'm not the greatest public speaker. And
You, yeah, you seem to be doing fine. When I found O'Malley's Adventure, um, or yeah, O'Malley's Media. Time you're still. I think. Do you still go under O'Malley's Adventure or O'Malley's Media?
well, that's what I'm trying to do. I had O'Malley's Adventure, and I was just going to do like backpacking and gear reviews and stuff like that. And
Right.
and what ended up happening was, I I believe it was in mid 2018. I said I'm going to go live once a day, every day for a year.
Ooh.
Well, when I started doing the whole O'Malley live every evening, um, I realized maybe for the first 4 or 5 days it was easy because
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about. Well,
Yeah.
then I incorporated one article from this day in history. I actually borrowed that from your podcast. Uh,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Good.
So what I tried to do is I tried to have like a main talking point, this day in history, and sometimes I would throw in a meme of the day if I saw something that was really funny. And I tried to keep it at 10 or 12 minutes or less. And after I'd done that, we were running towards the election cycle, so I started having people on my show that we were discussing local issues, but I kept doing it under the O'Malley's Adventure um, YouTube channel.
Right.
So what happened was when things started to get political, and I'm working my actual day job is I work for the city, the same people that I'm interviewing. Um, I realized we better make some changes, and that's when I started O'Malley's Media, and I filed
Uh,
for an LLC, and I got insured, and I
oh, good.
I went.
Good. Good for you.
So right now, I'm trying to do is make the transition to where like these interviews are going to be on the O'Malley's Media YouTube channel and Facebook page, and
Okay.
then all the fun stuff like the hiking at Hocking Hills and the coffee reviews that I'm working on now, those are all going to be on O'Malley's Adventure, and I'm going to try to separate them because right now, if you try to navigate either of those YouTube channels, it's like navigating a yard sale.
I finally got the courage to put a YouTube channel up myself, and it's like if you type in "We live on a planet," it doesn't pop right up
Right.
as a channel, so it's buried in there, and it's a train wreck. But I got to start somewhere.
Sure. Well, that and over the course of time, what I noticed is nobody found my channel until I hit like 100 subscribers. And then once I hit 100 subs, then it kind of came 50-50. My channel's, if you're not subscribed and you look up O'Malley's Adventure or O'Malley's Media, um, I'm still on page like 3 to 5 on the search.
Oh wow.
So, but no, I think it's good. I think with the way that social media is set up now, um, especially with Anchor, if you do something that is like what you do, that is perfect because they do all the circulating for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Anchor's been good to me. Anchor's really been good because they had me featured on their homepage when you first open up their app in the listen and learn section that they had. I was rubbing elbows with some names, and so they've been really good to me, and they helped me get a name throughout myself because we live on a planet that's just been totally organic, except for the recent my bag initiative. But other than that, it's been an organic.
right, and I was gonna say that's one of the things that sort of puts yours different. The other people that I see or listen to, they don't quite have that type of reach. Like most people, it's very their content is very topic oriented, and that's it. But
Right.
yours has a little bit of merchandise. A little bit later, we can talk about Carpe if you want.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, I would love
you
to.
yours sort of took off in a lot of different ways than most podcasts go, and
Yeah.
which sort of has my attention. That's an interesting because usually you have to go looking for um, sponsors, and
Right.
sometimes they come to you in different types of ways.
Right, right. And you and I are doing something a little different in this game of podcasting, anyways, that we're one man shows. And that's really kind of a rarity in the podcasting game.
Yes,
If most podcasts that or that are popular, it's not usually a one man show, or they're very interview based driven, but it's usually two people. So to be running your own show and doing it yourself is tricky, but it's also rewarding because you're in control of every aspect of the show.
absolutely. It's almost like old school talk radio.
Hmm.
Very, very,
And
very
I'm a
similar.
fan of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I started listening to things on Anchor. Is I'm a huge talk radio fan. Well, talk
Yeah, me
radio
too.
sort of, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but a lot of the names started to retire and people that I listened to, and it just
Yeah,
kind of went away, for lack of better
yeah,
words. But so let's talk about your journey through Anchor, and a couple of the topics that you discuss um,
sure.
on a somewhat regular basis. Um, let's talk about a little bit about mental health, and
Yeah,
and how that sort of plays a part in what you're doing in your reach and your message.
yeah, absolutely. It's something that I just recently, later on in my life, started becoming more comfortable to talk about. I held it really tight to my chest, was embarrassed about it. The stigma behind mental health illness is there still, unless you're a star or somebody famous. It's the stigma's still there. So, and so I recently decided maybe I don't know how many episodes into my show that I decided to talk about that. And once I did, I felt really freed about talking about it, because it does take away that stigma of it, or it lets people say, "Hey, I'm not the only one." Because when I was about 25 years old, I was diagnosed as having bipolar, and at the time, I didn't know what it was. The doctor had to explain to me. He goes, "Well, you heard of manic depressive?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that." And he goes, "Well, we're calling it bipolar now." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I felt at least relieved, because now I knew I wasn't quote unquote crazy. There was some chemical imbalance going on with me, and so it could be treated. And then the long journey began, and the years of struggling, and then abuse of substances and all that stuff. But what Anchor has given me now is that ability of that talk therapy that I really get, and being able to communicate on this world scale that I have is a really good thing, because when I'm talking on We Live on a Planet, I'm talking to one person. Even though my audience is large, it's one person I'm trying to reach always with We Live on a Planet. And so it's brought to me a lot of solace, in the sense of I can talk about it and not have that shame like I used to.
Right. Um, so,
Here we go, boy. Wants a treat.
oh my, there, my, the one dog's name is Penny, and we say that the
Yeah.
the reason that her name is Penny is because she don't have enough sense to be called quarter, nickel, or dime.
you
she,
know, I was listening to an interview today on NPR, and it was with Mark Maron, who has WTF is the name of his podcast. It's world famous, and he does his podcasting from home. Most podcasters that have a name do, unless they're like Joe Rogan. And he talked about what's happening right now, how the dog is barking in the background and all that stuff. That is a part of life, though. That's part of what's going to happen sometimes. I think more in the future of people working from home with this pandemic that's here, because you're going to find people, famous radio people, are going to be staying home. Like, take for example, Sirius Radio, XM, Sirius XM. Those DJs are working from home.
right.
They're not in some studio someplace. And so to have to work from home in a podcast setting gives you that freedom, because you're in that familiar setting of what is yours and what you know. And there's going to be sometimes a sound of a cat in the background or the dog saying, "Hey, Dad, notice me." And that's just what makes
Right.
everything perfect. And that's what I love about my podcast, not to boast about it, but I do it on the fly in the sense of it's one and done. And if a dog is barking in the background, that's great. That's not going to get edited out because I don't edit my life, and I shouldn't try to do it when I'm doing something that is for enjoyment as well, because this is supposed to be for enjoyment.
Right. You know, I'm going to borrow that quote. I don't edit
Yeah.
my life. That's
Yeah. We don't. We would love to. We do in a social media sense, in that little tie it up in a little bow and look how everything perfect is on social media, but that's not true. And when you see that, that should raise some red herrings to people. And it does with me when I see, those perfect little lifestyles. It's like, it's not perfect, and we're humans and we have faults and we make mistakes and we fall down, and even the best of us, it's just, do you get back up?
right. Um, so you touched a little bit on uh, substance abuse with being bipolar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did one lead to the other as far as
um I started that was my joke. um, I was trying to be funny. No, I started using at a really young age. My audience knows that listen, but your audience doesn't. And so yeah, I started at about 13 or 14. I can remember starting to smoke cigarettes, and I had older cousins and stuff, and some older brothers, and was getting into my parents' liquor cabinet at a fairly young age. So I think that even then I was undiagnosed until I was older. So I just would self medicate. And then when college hit, when I was in college, I really started putting the hammer down on self medicating and, experimenting with acid and, you name it, I tried it. I was one of those guys that, yeah, give it to me more. And if they're like, oh, this stuff's really strong, I'm like, perfect, And so
right?
I've always been a risk taker, always wanted to kind of live on the edge. And so those went hand in hand. And then my substance of choice was alcohol. I had tried everything, but it became just alcohol, and it was beer. And I was that Irish guy, and I thought
Right.
that was my job, was to be the drunk in the family, that happy Irish drunk. And I filled that role and thought that was the role that was supposed to be for me, until a little over 4 years ago, I decided to check myself into rehab and said enough was enough. So yeah.
Um, my my story is similar, but it had a different um, a different way that it sort of manifested itself as far as that went. Um, when I was in my early 20s, um, college hoops was my thing. You know, March Madness, betting
Yeah.
on basketball, and I didn't get it at the time. I was one of those people that had problems with things and never seen it as a problem until something really bad happened, and
Right.
it was like, oh man, that didn't work out so well. Um, and so, but mine ended with alcohol, and I've had 5 years, 10 months, and 14 days worth of sobriety. Um,
Wow.
but with mine, my addiction, my addiction, uh, it, it 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 would manifest itself very quickly. Like with
Yeah.
gambling was maybe 3 or 4 years tops.
Wow.
Drinking was 3 years, and believe me when I say this, the road of excess leading to the path of wisdom is not a shortcut. It is not, and
Yeah.
that's the one that one, it almost took me out, and every day that I look at the green side of the grass is a pure blessing, without a doubt. Um,
Yeah. I can relate to that feeling of sobriety. Sobriety is it's a gift. It's something that you have to work at. I like that which you've heard since you're sober longer than I have. So you've heard all the old timers talk, and I appreciate you sharing that too as well. But I want to say you've heard this analogy probably. Sobriety's never owned; it's rented, and rent is due every day.
Oh yes. Oh,
Yeah. And
and
that's true. It really is because, here I am, my 4.5 or a little over 4 years, and you've got your 5 years, but you and I know that we have that in us. So if we pick up and drink, we're still an alcoholic. Just because we don't drink doesn't mean we're not an alcoholic.
right,
And it's just like being a smoker. That's something I battled with, and I thought that giving up smoking is harder than anything I've ever done. And I know if I decide to pick up and just take one drag of somebody's cigarette, then I've made that conscious choice to become a smoker again,
right.
because that's all it's going to take. And I know that with drinking as well. So I haven't even fallen off at all, knock on wood. I haven't had to touch my lips because I know myself, like you said, that addictive personality that we both seem to have.
Yes.
I would go in harder, my friend. I would go in harder.
Right. Well, they say that just because you go into rehab and you become sober, they say that, let's say that you have 2 years or so of sobriety, that if you would fall off the wagon, you will pick up where you left off. There's no your brain won't see any difference, and that's usually
Exactly.
and that's what makes falling off the wagon devastating for most people, because you can't you have zero tolerance after a couple years, and if you go back to drinking like you did before you went in the tank, you're gonna have some big problems. So
Yeah. Well, I was shaken. I got to the point where I had to drink morning because I was so shaky, and I started hiding it from my wife. And nobody told me to stop drinking. I decided to go to rehab myself. I had that epiphany. So it wasn't a judge, it wasn't somebody, but I started hiding it, and I never hid it. I never had shame. I always, oh great, today's the day to barbecue because barbecuing means I can drink more. And so, but what happened in the morning times is my wife would work nights, and she would be sleeping still, and I would get up, I would go out to the back porch, crack a beer, open it, and leave it out there. And at the time I was still smoking. So when I would hear her rising up, I would like, oh, time to get a cup of coffee. So I'd get a cup of coffee. When she'd come down, she'd have her coffee. I'd go outside to have my cigarette, which I was having, still smoking. And I had my beer right to the side. So I'd have my coffee where she could see my coffee, but I would be glancing over where she couldn't see me and chugging my beer as quick as I could so I wouldn't shake anymore. And I'm like, wow, this is something's real. This I was always able to handle this, and now there's something really spiraling out of control.
right,
And so yeah, it was enough for me. I was like, and then I was frightened because they said that might not go away.
right, and yeah,
That might not go away.
right, and with mine, I I don't think I ever got to a point where I hit it. I was at a point in life where I was just going to do it and damn the consequences. I wasn't very bashful about it. But with mine,
Right.
I come home to an empty house, and that's when I was like, uh oh,
Ooh.
something's
Yeah.
something's got to change. And
Yeah, that'll wake you up real quick, my
yeah,
friend.
yeah, it was I'm able to laugh about it now, but I can tell you at the time it was not a good place to be. But
No.
sometimes that has to happen. Um,
Yeah.
to
Yeah, yeah. I think that everybody needs a rock bottom or something to wake you up.
hmm because well, and unfortunately, some people their rock bottom is they die. You know, and
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, yeah.
and that was one thing that I to me was odd. Um, when I was in rehab, there were people there that um, they did not want to live anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I don't. If I thought it, I don't remember it, because to me that's like quitting. And one of my double-edged sword personality traits is I'm incredibly competitive,
Right.
and I don't lose. That's in my head. If I'm going like through life, I don't think I've ever had a day where I was depressed. I don't know
Ooh,
it. I don't know what that is.
ooh, you're lucky, my friend, because I'll tell you, that's been a bane of my existence. That's put me on a psych ward more than once. And that's something that is a really hard thing to even say right now. I mean, I haven't talked to many people about that, but my audience knows, but yours once again doesn't. But being on a psych ward is a very, very humbling experience. It's very one flew over the cuckoo's nest ish.
Yeah.
Um, it's you get treated nowadays. It's very you feel like you're a criminal. It's been years since I've stepped foot in one, but the last time I felt very like I had done something wrong. I didn't feel like a patient. I felt like a um, inmate, and it's hard. But I've been depressed more than once, and that's the part about bipolar depression. It can come on real strong, and once you have it, that thought of suicidal thoughts or not wanting to live are strong. And I've been there, and those are some dark, dark days. And it's a scary, scary, terrible place to be. And some people just can't relate to that. They are just like, no, I'm a win. I don't give up. I don't this, I don't that. And they can't understand it. And it is a scary, dark place. And it's a place I hope I never have to go again because it's bad. It's
Right.
bad.
Well, and that's what through talking with your groups and whatnot, um, it, it almost acted as a scare me straight type of thing because in my head, I'm like, okay, everybody in here is saying the same thing. I'm not there yet.
Right.
So it just I'm kind of glad in a way that I got to hear those people's story.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. And everybody's bottom is different too, because you people will try to compare and they'll be like, well, that wasn't me or that didn't happen to me or I don't feel that way. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter, trying to compare those type of stories is hard. But when you can sit in a group like you did and get something out of it, that's when all of a sudden it's important. That's when all of a sudden it's like, yeah, because I've been on, for an example, been on I think my first time on a psych ward, I all of a sudden I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm not like these people. There is nothing wrong with me because I saw some guy take a biscuit off his tray, throw it on the ground, and start yelling at it and talking to it. And it scared me. And it was like, I am not there. And my nurse and doctor had to explain, they're like, you might not be like that guy, but you still need to be here right now because you're sick and there's some issues that we need to take care of and you're in a deep depression and we can treat it with meds. And so it's hard to be in places like that to compare, but sometimes those are what you need too to be that aha or an opening.
Yeah. So the last topic I wanted to actually discuss was something that happened
Sure.
here recently, with you had a car accident.
I did March 17th of last year, and it was horrific. It was a terrible, terrible car accident. I was with my father. I had just come back from visiting my older brother. My father's older; he's in his late 70s, and we were a rock throw from his house, a house I grew up in, and we were heading northbound. There was a car in the southbound lane that had stopped, getting ready to turn into their driveway. A car behind them stopped, and then a truck coming, and he didn't stop. And instead of taking his truck into the ditch, he took it into me. And I was going about 50, 55, and he was going the same. So
Wow.
I saw it right at the split last second, and I was able to yank the wheel so it wasn't 100% head on, but it was pretty darn close. It took about an hour to cut me out of the car.
Holy
So I
cow.
was trapped. I was trapped. And that was a terrifying feeling to be trapped and then to be put into a hospital for almost a month. I was really afraid that my depression would come on. And so I was able to treat myself there with medication so that didn't stop. And then I also saw a doctor while I was in there, a therapist, because it was a very traumatic thing. I almost died, you know, and then to where I was worried about my dad. He ended up being able to get out of the car, but he almost lost his eye. He had a cut over his eye that could have taken his eye out, and then come to find out he had a compression fracture in his back.
Oh
With
wow.
me, with me, I broke. Oh my goodness, I had never broken a bone in my body. It was my. I had just turned 49. I just turned 50 a couple days ago, March 16th. But I had just turned 49, and I had never broken a bone in my body. And I broke my leg, my ribs, my hand, my clavicle, my sternum. I punctured a lung. Yeah, I had to have a chest tube. It was bad. It was a bad situation.
Wow.
But I'm surprised I've made such a wonderful recovery from being in a wheelchair to sleeping in a hospital bed down in my house to now being able to walk. And being in a wheelchair too really opens up your eyes of things you take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really made me look at my life a lot different. I'm 50 now. I almost, I had that, and now I'm really trying to not hate myself for the things I've done before, but love myself for the things I have done and who I am, because I've been really down on myself for too many years and have a really low self esteem. And people don't believe that. They like, no, you seem like this and you're this. And it's like years and years of experience of masking
Sure.
this, and it's years and years of just fitting in, but it's always been a struggle. And so now I've been just peeling back these layers of the onion more and more. And the more I do it, the more free I feel.
Yeah. So, um, total, how long were you out of commission after the accident? Almost a
Oh,
year?
months.
Months?
Yeah, months and months. Months of rehab. Um, months of rehab. Almost a month in the hospital. I still, like, just the other day I had to put a one of those lidocaine patches on my knee where I broke my leg, because it's still kind of, when the weather, we had snow here in Oswego the other day. And so I'm my collarbone where it's broke, they didn't do surgery on it, so I got a big, you can see the lump
Right.
of the bone where it's broke. And so, but I'm getting there. I would feel that I would say I'm probably 99%
Yeah.
compared to where I was. I'll never be 100% from this accident ever,
R-
ever, because I'll always feel the effects from it.
Right. How much hardware did you get as far as pins and screws and?
None, believe it or not. But I do have pins and screws in me. In 2012, I had back surgery. I blew out my lower back when I was younger, and I had years of just back problems. And in 2012, I ruptured a couple of discs and they popped. And so I had to have major back surgery. And that was almost 10 days in the hospital after that surgery. But I have 6 screws and 2 rods. And so right after the surgery, or after the accident, I was terrified that
Right.
all of a sudden this surgery that has been a godsend and I needed it. And it when they scanned my body after my car accident, they said that all my hardware was in place and nothing had moved. And so I was very, very fortunate. But yeah, no surgeries after this accident and no pins or rods or anything. So even though I busted myself all up good, I got lucky in the sense of no surgeries. I did have to have surgery on my hand to remove glass,
Oh
and
wow.
that was like 2 months after the surgery. Glass had come to the surface that was impacted so deep into my hand, and it came up to the top of my hand. And it was a big chunk of glass that had been in there since the accident.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it was bad.
so the doctor that did your back surgery done a fantastic job.
Yeah, and I have heard horror stories from people that have had back surgery. They're like, don't do it, whatever you do. But I was in a place where I had no other choice. I went and saw a specialist, and he said, I can't help you. And I was in tears. I was like, what do you mean you can't help me? And he goes, no, what you need is extensive. I only do a certain type of surgery, what you need. And my surgery for my back was about 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had to wear a bone stimulator for a year for 3 hours a day. And what it does is it works on the cellular level, tricking your body to thinking that you have a fresh break, and it releases the whatever to be fixing your back. So
Wow.
they took my old disc that was busted, made like a paste out of it, and packed that all in, and then mesh. There's mesh. It's pretty amazing what they can do nowadays.
Huh.
Really amazing.
Because that's one of the reasons I haven't had mine fixed yet. I sort of a similar story. I broke my L2 when I was in high
Mm,
school, and
ouch.
nobody has given. I've had back pain ever since, and
Yeah.
none of the doctors. I was like, so what kind of percentage are you going to give me as far as you know recovery, and what will I be like afterwards? And they're like, well, you're probably looking at 60%, and and that's one doctor, and another doctor's gone as high as 85, and I'm thinking, you know what? I've dealt with it this long. When those numbers get a little bit higher, I'll be a little more
Yeah.
confident because I don't want to. There's too many things I got left as far as my to-do list, and
Yeah.
having a back is a big piece of that. I have to have that.
I got lucky too because being that I have an addictive personality, I'm very fortunate though that I didn't get hooked on any pain meds or anything because my back was so bad at a nerve level. It was nerve pain because my sciatica was so badly pinched that no pain pills helped anyways. And so
Oh my.
and I hated taking pain meds because they make my nose itch and all that stuff. So
Right, right.
I've tried a lot of, like I said, a lot of drugs in my life, and I'm glad that those were never one of my things because I was fearful in the back of my mind going, I hope that I don't get hooked on anything. And I remember not too long after my back surgery taking the narcotics I had and getting rid of them. I didn't need them anymore. I just didn't even need them. So I was like, there's no sense I even having them. And so I got very lucky with that. And it didn't mean I stopped drinking. I drank more and more and more, but at least I didn't get hooked on
Right.
narcs or anything.
Right. No, that was a one of the most um, the probably the scariest story that I think I heard in rehab was a guy had 22 years sobriety,
Oh,
and he broke his hip, and sure enough he got hooked on the pain pills.
yeah. And
And
those are bad.
yeah, and that's how he ended up in there. And I was like, to have that much time, you know and to get sort of sideswiped like that, it didn't seem right, but it can happen, you know.
Yeah.
So
I know it can happen. It can happen and blindside you quickly. And there's a couple of people I went to rehab with that are no longer with us. The addiction took them.
yeah,
And I lived with when I was in Southern California at rehab, and it was a house of like 12 or 13 of us, depending on who was going home that day or not. And these guys were all younger. I was the old dude in the house, and some of them are just not here, and it breaks my heart.
yeah. Well, it doesn't discriminate.
No,
It
no.
it does not
Just like
discriminate.
coronavirus.
Right,
That's like the virus.
right,
We're talking how much that's going to change things, and I really think that's going to change a lot in our society of a lot of societal shifts.
right. Because well, like you said, before we got started, we were talking about people shaking hands.
Yeah,
You could quickly see that become a thing of the past.
I really think it could because there are cultures right now where they do not shake hands. They just don't, and that's in their culture. And so, right now, you might have some listeners that going, "Are you guys? I thought you said you're not using anymore. That sounds psychotic. That sounds like you're using something. We're
Right.
not using." But the theory of what we were talking about before your listeners and my listeners came on was, I think that maybe we'll have a societal shift where maybe babies that are born right now will never shake a hand
Right.
because they'll just be that. And they'll hear stories about their grandparents or their parents maybe shaking hands and they'll say, ew. So when you came up to a stranger that you have never met. That's how you greeted them. You'd reach out and touch their hand. How do you know where they've been? Well, you didn't. That's just culture. That's how you said hello. Well, that doesn't sound very brilliant.
Right,
And I
right,
think it
right.
will be like one of those aha. And it's like, you know what? People can there's living things on us as we speak. We have, that's part of the human. We have microbials and germs, and so I think that maybe that will be a shift where people just don't. And I also think working from home with jobs that do allow it, bigger corporations or other jobs are going to see that they can still get things done with people working from home. And so now you're going to have people working from home more than not, and being able to spend maybe more time with their family and their loved ones,
Yeah,
and not having as much greenhouse emissions because you're not on the roads as much. And so there'll be a little bit of change. With bad things, good things can come, and I'm that type of guy where I always try to look at a bad situation and see what could possibly good come out of it.
right. Well, we got notified Sunday that we were going to be off work for 2 weeks. So this is my actual second day of being home,
Right.
and so with the YouTube channels and editing video and whatnot, I thought, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity, to get caught up on some things that I want to do, and
Yeah.
and I understand now why I'm not meant 100% for a desk job. I drink way too much coffee,
Me too.
and just um, sitting and looking at a screen. I have to get up and move around sometimes because I'm very claustrophobic to begin with.
Hmm.
And as much as I like my studio and the things I've got, like little decorations and whatnot, I have to come out of this thing once in a while.
Yeah.
So, but I can see, not just from myself working from home these past couple days, but
I lost you there just for a second. Say what you just said. We got caught in the echo
oh,
of
okay.
the.
Well,
Yeah. Say one more time.
what I've learned, and seen, not just myself working from home, but other people, I can see that being a huge trend. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, even you take the medical field, right? Unless it's something where a doctor actually has to, say, x-ray a broken bone or whatnot, a lot of uh, doctor's appointments could be done through webcams, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. It's funny you say that. I have a meeting with my therapist this Thursday, and it's telecall because they're saying don't come into the mental health facility. Your therapist will call you on your phone. So I have my upcoming therapy, this first therapy meeting ever on a phone with somebody. So that will be different. I don't know if we're doing Skype or if it's just a phone call.
Right.
So yeah, it's happening, and this could be the future, maybe, of always, even after this pandemic dies down. It could be always where, because if I can still be able to talk to him and get value, I'd much rather do that than jump in my car and drive a city over from where I live to go see this guy, to jump back over to drive my car to drive back. If I
Right.
can do it right on my phone, I might as well.
Far more efficient way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's too much emissions that we're putting out in this planet that I live on anyways, that we both live on, that we all live on.
That, and look at just in time, how much time could be saved. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger and my kids were young, I was very frugal with money. And now that
Right.
I'm not going to use the word old. I'm going to say now that I'm older,
Right.
I'm far more frugal with my time because
Yes.
I know that I don't have as much of that left.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. The older we get, the quicker time does go as well.
Mm-hmm.
It really does, because, and my father would say, "Oh, enjoy it now because it's going to." You're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Time dead, whatever." And now it's like it's already March is almost over,
Yep.
and it's 2020.
Right.
No, I just got out of high school, and it's like, yeah, 30 years ago.
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm coming up on that. I just turned 47. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm It's weird because things that happened, let's say in 2005. In your head, you're
Yeah.
thinking, it's a few years ago. No, man, that was 15 years
Hmm.
ago. but
Yeah. It is, and that happens to me a lot. I don't know what 50 is supposed to feel like or be, and I don't know. You almost are like waiting for something, I guess, of like now what's next.
yeah, but all joking aside,
Yeah.
looking at what you've done with We Live on a Planet just in the past couple of years,
Yeah.
as much as we see our age as far as time, I mean that's a brand new chapter. I
It
mean,
is. It's a chapter I'm loving writing right now. I really am.
so when I see things like that, that's only 2 years old. Regardless of your actual age, that's only 2 years old.
Yeah.
And I start looking at things more in that regard,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Be-
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I like that concept of thinking.
because well, I've worked for the road crew here in the town that I live in for 24 years. I'll have 24 years in July, you know,
Congratulations.
and I was thinking to my event that's going to come to an end.
Right.
I have friends that have stayed well past the time that they could have retired. That's not going to be me. That is not going to be my first eligible day to retire. I'm gone, and that following day I will move on to something else. That's I don't see me hanging around. You know, we had a guy that worked. I believe he was on the road crew for 51 years, and in my head I'm like, why aren't you retiring? You could have retired twice.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but no, man, great conversation. That's all I have as far as things that I wanted to discuss.
Groovy. We
It
could maybe next time talk about carpe. I'll tell you that story.
Oh yeah, you know what? Damn, I wanted to talk about that because that's sort of a cool story in itself. That
That's going to be a whole new chapter right now that is being written in my life that I am so super excited about, and it's going to open up a lot of things for me. I think in the voice communicational type things, I'm really hoping for. I'm wishing I'm putting it out in the universe that it does happen.
right. Well, we've been up live on this end for a little over 50 minutes. Do we want to
Wow.
do we want to set up and do another one, or do we want to talk about Carpe now?
I can tell you real quick
Sure.
if you want to if your listeners want to hear, and my listeners have heard it before, but yours haven't. I had the opportunity. I have hyperhidrosis, which is just excessive sweating. You know, you sweat a lot, and I've been this way my whole life, and I've tried every product that you can get. My wife saw this stuff called Carpe, it's like seize the day Carpe, like Carpe Diem, CARPE.
Yeah.
She got it. She got it for me, and I tried it, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? This stuff works! I can't believe it! I can. My pits are not soaked. I can't believe this, you know?" And so
Right.
I was like, well, what am I going to do? I posted a picture of the product saying, I hope this works. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes on Instagram. And then Carpe started following me. And I was like, oh, huh, let's take a look. They've got like 80,000 followers, but they're only following about 500. And I was like intrigued by that. So I started thinking a lot about them. And then my brain went into We Live on a Planet mode. And I was like, hey, maybe I could get them, come on, and do an ad on my podcast because I really like the product. And then I thought about it all night, went to
Yeah.
bed. And when I woke up, I was thinking about Carpe again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to message them, but I'm not going to ask them to do a commercial. I'm just going to tell them how much I like their product and thank them for making something that finally works that I can wear whatever shirt I want. So I messaged them on Instagram, told them about it, and they messaged me right back and said, "This is great. We'd love to hear that. Would you be interested in coming and shooting a testimonial slash commercial in our studios here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina?" And I was like, yes, I would. And they go, great. What's your schedule? And what's your airport of choice that you'd like to fly out? And we'll fly you out here
Holy
and shoot
cow.
a commercial. Yeah. And so I flew out there to Chapel Hill, met with them, the two CEOs. and then the head of the PR shot the testimonial commercial, and then they took me out to lunch, and we just kind of talked, and I told them how I would love to be their voice of Carpe on radio, and they were really they seemed really down for it, and they said yeah. And then I asked them if they would like to be on my podcast, and they said absolutely, and they're down for that. And they just fired up a podcast the other day on Anchor, and so I'm excited. They took my advice, and now I'm going to interview with them. But their commercial that they have coming out that I'm in is, I said to the kid after we got done shooting, and I say kids because these guys are CEOs of this company, but they're only 25-year-old
Oh, wow.
guys. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's the reason why I wasn't nervous either, because they're not my peers. I have a 33-year-old and a 25-year-old, and so, well, soon to be 25. So when I met these guys, I wasn't really nervous. I was more just in dad mode and said, "Hey, I'm your guy. You guys don't realize it, but I'm here, a Carpe guy. Here I am. You've been waiting for me. Here I am."
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome. And so I'm going to have them on my podcast. But I said to him after we did the commercial, I said, "Wow, this was great. It's going to freak me out to see it on commercial on TV, because I've already seen your commercials on late at night." And he laughed. I said, "Well, you got to start somewhere. They're late at night." He goes, "Yeah, well, you'll really freak out when you see it on the Super Bowl." And I laughed, and he goes, "Oh no, I'm serious. Our plans are February 2021. Our plans are to have a spot for the Super Bowl." I
Wow.
couldn't believe it. Yeah, and they just secured a little over $6 million from investors and stuff. So they've been around since 2015. They're really going to start making a name for themselves because the product works, and they have other things besides underarm. They have it for hands. So if your hands sweat a lot,
Right.
you can get it for your hands, and if your thighs or your they have it for your face. So yeah, I'm really excited, and something's going to come out of this, I think. And if something doesn't come out, just this commercial, nobody can take away this experience that I had, and it was fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
They flew you there.
yeah, they flew me there. And then they told me on the way back, they're like, "Hey, whatever expenses in the airport, if you eat, if you drink, anything like that, just keep your receipt. We'll take care of everything. We'll take care of it all." But I didn't take them up on that because I don't drink for one anymore, which is awesome. And I didn't want to buy airport food because it's expensive. And just because I'm on their dime, I'm not that type of guy.
Right,
It's just
right,
not me.
right.
That's not how I roll. So they had already taken me out to lunch. And they flew me out there. I wasn't gonna do that. But I thought it was a great experience. They're great, intelligent group of people, and a great company. They were fun. I went into their office, and it was a really nice office. But as I'm walking in, I'm gotta careful where I walk because I'm walking on Nerf darts because they got in a Nerf war in their office.
Oh my.
Yeah, so it's one of those cool hip companies.
Right.
It was fantastic, my friend. I wouldn't have changed a thing. And you know how sometimes you do something, you're like, "Man, I should have done this, or I should have done this." I I wouldn't have changed anything. It was weird though to be in front of camera. We talked about that at the beginning of this interview. You said how it is to be live and how you're working on it. And I was nervous, but they said, "You don't seem nervous at all." And I'm like, "Oh, good,"
Good.
because I'm used to being in front of a microphone, but to be in front of a camera, that's a whole nother animal.
Right. Right. But that
It was a blast.
that's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, I'm not a big, because a lot of people get into the Super Bowl commercials and whatnot, and I'm not really big on that. But this coming year I'm gonna check it out.
I know.
that's,
It would
that's
be awesome.
Yeah, it
I'm
would.
so excited.
So anyway, we've been up an
Thank
hour.
you.
We have been,
Yeah, thank you. This was a blast.
yes, we're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah.
No, sometimes had a friend of mine that was on, and we were talking. I believe we were actually talking about the road department in Maslin, where I work, and he emailed me a few documents and some ideas and whatnot. He goes, "Do you think this is enough for a show?" And I said, you don't understand. Once you hit that go live button and you're actually engaged in a conversation with somebody, it's like a black hole.
Yeah,
It does not take long to get past an hour. It just don't.
it does not. That's true.
So anyway, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
For sure, we will do this again. For those out there watching in the YouTube, Facebook land, check out We Live on a Planet, and I believe you are on all of them: Spotify, iTunes, Anchor.
Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm excited. I'm thankful for that.
And also check out your you're doing the giveaway before
Yeah,
before
my
yes,
website, WLOAP.com.
right.
And I'm having a giveaway, and I'm going to be doing a drawing very shortly. All you have to do is subscribe, and I don't blast people up with a bunch of stuff. All you would do is get an email when a new episode comes out of We Live on a Planet. But once you subscribe, it's a value of over $50 is what I'm giving away. It's burning a hole in my pocket to give it away to. I want to so much.
uh,
Giving away things feels good. It feels good to give away things.
yes, especially if it's for if the cause is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think it's a good mindset to be in as far as what we're doing.
yeah.
So anyway, that, my friends, is a wrap. Tomorrow evening there will be a show because the bike club that I'm with canceled all the club rides. So we will be live tomorrow at 8 o'clock p.m. and I have no idea what I'm going to talk about.
Down the rabbit hole you will go.
Yes, yes. If you could, I'm going to wrap this up, but stay on the line.
Sure.
Can we do that?
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
And for you people out there in internet land, until next time, stay sharp, keep a tight shot group, and rock on.